Hi, welcome to the presentation on COVID-19, a case study in Bangalore response to epidemic. The structure of this presentation is such that first we will cover the definitions, then we will look at what was the scenario of Bangalore in fighting COVID-19 in the initial stages. Then we will talk about how infrastructure was developed within Bangalore to combat the epidemic. Then we will see how the epidemic spread changed the strategies. Then we'll look at what were the right things that done by administration of Bangalore. Then we will see what data was released and what are the shortfalls of the data. Then we will talk about the insights that we can gain from this data. Then we'll look at how administration failed to act in right time to stop the epidemic. Then we will see what are the general precautions we should take, knowing fully well about the nature of the epidemic in our workplaces so that we can have a safe and healthy workplace. Hope this entire presentation will give you the right kind of insights for you to make the right kind of decisions. Thank you. Let's look at the entire presentation in depth. Let's start with certain definitions. Epidemic, by definition, is something which affects many persons at the same time and spreads from person to person in a localized way where the disease is not permanently prevalent. It occurs at a region or at a community level. A pandemic, on the other hand, is an epidemic that has spread over a large area and it breaks all the geographical barriers and it gets transmitted to human in a very fast way across the globe, and that is where you call it as a pandemic. There are many jargons that we use in defining the epidemic. The most commonly heard jargons are listed here. Comorbidity, in simple terms, comorbidity refers to the presence of more than one disorder in the same person. Positivity ratio is a ratio of cumulative cases to cumulative tests or on a day, new cases to total tests per day, either on a daily basis or on a cumulative count basis. Contact tracing and tracking is all about finding out all those people who came in contact with the infected person prior to he being treated and tested positive. So this will also give you an idea of how many people got infected because of this infected person, a symptomatic person who was transmitting the disease till such time he was tested and found to be positive. Then we talk about the herd immunity. When 80% of the community is infected by the virus, normally the community will automatically develop an immunity for that particular virus. So, herd immunity in most cases means a large section of the entire community already has sufficient number of antibodies to fight the epidemic. Community transmission is said to happen when the etiology of the spread of the disease means from when, where, and how a person got infected is not traceable, and there are no sufficient primary and secondary contacts to trace back the history as to how he got the infection. The case study in question is about Bangalore. On 8th of March, Bangalore was no particular case of COVID. By evening of 8th March, Bangalore reported its first COVID-19 case. 85 days later, on 31st of May 2020, Bangalore had 358 cases with a positivity rate of 1% and recovery rate of 49%, and they had reported around 11 deaths, and recoveries were around 174. Active cases were 158, and there were 32 containment zones, and cumulative tests conducted were around 33,000. So pretty much the Bangalore city looked like this, with all the white spots are where there is no. Majority of Bangalore city was still white, other than certain peripherals where there were certain cases. And the curves, the epidemic curves for India, Karnataka state and Bangalore are compared, where the red one is the India curve, the purple one is the Karnataka state curve, and the green one is the Bangalore curve. So pretty much the Bangaloreans were very happy that compared to all India or at a Karnataka state level, in the Bangalore had done a great work. Whereas in Mumbai or in Calcutta or in Chennai, already the cases were very high. In Mumbai, it was around 38,000, and in Delhi, it was already 18,000. And Calcutta already had 2,000 cases. So, all over India, when there were 1,82,000 cases by 31st of May, Bangalore had only 358 cases. So everybody thought that Bangalore model was something to be hailed about and to be emulated. 55 days after the 31st of May, that's on 25th of July, with more than 40,000 cases, Bangalore looked like this. For first 85 days, what looked working, what went wrong in the next 55 days. The stats as on 25th of July were the total positive cases were around 43,000 plus, the active cases were 31,000 plus, recovered cases were only 10,000, the recovery rate had fallen down to almost 24%, the deaths were almost 863, and there are 12,854 containment zones containment zones in Bangalore. So something has gone wrong because from 1st of June there was a systematic unlocking of the whole city, and during this unlock period the actual cases increased drastically. So something was drastically wrong. What went wrong? We'll see it later. So somewhere a sense of hopelessness had set on the people of Bangalore, thinking that the Bangalore model had failed. What does Bangalore data look like on day 42? That was a week after the 25th of July, the last week of July. Within one single week, there are almost 15,000 cases added. The average per day new cases were around 2,000. The active cases also started increasing. Recovered cases were very low at only 16,000, and deaths had really, compared to 31st of May, the deaths had really become 100 times the deaths had increased. Imagine, in a matter of just 55 days, the deaths had multiplied 100 times. Something really worrying. What was the reason for such a high percentage of deaths? The containment zones also had become 20,679 by that time, and tests conducted were around 3 lakh plus. Something was happening, and the positivity rate was around 30% on a day to day basis. 30% positivity rate means within 3 days you are actually doubling. The precursor to the whole scenario is what happened in the first 85 days, and the cases were only 358. It was a low testing phase. What happened in the first 85 days was The average number of tests that were being done in Bangalore were hardly 1,000. The two, if you do 1,000 tests, it used to take 2 days to get all the results. So if you really see the curve here, the brown curve indicates that there are multiple zeros. This implies that on an average, when you are testing around 1,000, this infrastructure was not sufficient enough to support higher testing. There was no infrastructure, therefore, because you are not testing enough, you are not getting enough cases. Just I am summarizing. So, the key insight was the government had to ramp up infrastructure for testing. Next 55 data is split into 5 blocks of 10 days each to make you understand how an increased testing had a totally different kind of an effect on the cases in Bangalore. The true indicators that were required to watch for were the daily new cases, daily tests, contacts vis-a-vis the testing samples, cumulative test to cumulative cases, and rapid action to reach serious patients to healthcare facility. There are several untruths that were being peddled in the media during this COVID-19 infection period when the cases were going up in the next 55 days period after 31st of May. When the cases were rising, the media was breaking news every day on the new kind of cases that were being identified or tested and found to be positive. A kind of a euphoria and a kind of a fear psychosis was induced into people. And certain untruths were also peddled. Like India has highest recovery rate, India's deaths per million population is lowest in the world, community transmission has begun, vaccine is getting ready and may be available commercially soon, lockdowns are useless, and all these kind of fears psychosis statements made in the media were not really based on data. They were based on interpretations of data with certain vested interests. Let me prove each of these data points as untruths. India has the highest recovery rate. Recovery rate is basically a ratio of total number of people recovered, or it's a closed cases, means people are found to be negative, tested negative after undergoing treatment or undergoing some kind of a healthcare the facilitation. If you really look at the way the new cases had increased, they had increased astronomically in the second to third block and third to fourth and fourth to fifth block. The cumulative cases are also jumped from 572 at the end of the first block to 45,000 plus in the fifth block. And active cases similarly had a very significant rise. And deaths, which are merely 22 in the first block, went on to end up at a cumulative level around 1100 deaths in a matter of just 40 days from a mere 11 few days back. So something was actually going wrong. Why the deaths were being happening? Why 100 times increase in deaths? So it was clear indication that the infrastructure was collapsing. People were not getting adequate critical care when they required. And these percentages on block to block kind of an increase when you map, you will see. The last 36% that you see is not correct because there's only 6 days data in that block of 10 days. Actually, if you look at the entire 10 days data, you will see that it has also doubled even in the last 10 days period. The government, after uh, 30 days, that's around the second week of July or something, they suddenly came up with some kind of a face saving mechanism. They said that you lock down everything for a week. Already the city had undergone 40 days of lockdown in the initial phase of the first 85 days, and now the government was saying again lockdown. After the mobility has started, it is very difficult to make people to sit at home. But when they enforced it, the cases were still the same because COVID-19 cannot be isolated by merely restricting mobility. By that time, enough damage had been already done, and it was too less was done, and too much was expected out of whatever the government had done. So the 1 week lockdown was a disaster. First 20 days there were issues in testing. During second block, tests dropped as labs were sealed due to infection in lab. As the cases were increasing, the pressure to give positive results was high, and the government was not adequately prepared, and people were not getting the positive results or negative results, because of which the results of the test were not known. People were not sure whether they should be admitted or not admitted. The symptoms were there, and the mortality went up, and infrastructure, the healthcare infrastructure, literally came to a standstill as the cases surged. I'm quickly showing you recovery ratio as a function of new cases identified in a graphical format. To understand what happens is when you daily look at a data on a daily basis, you get to know what is the status as on that day. It is like saying 1 month back my bank balance was 80,000 rupees. After 30 days during the month end, my balance is 8,000. Just by merely reporting what is the balance of the bank at the end of the month, you are not arriving at any meaningful data for you to have an insight or make a decision. What you would really would love to know is how did you spend the how did it become 80,000 to 8,000? Where did you spend? Where did the money go? In the similar way, when you say the recovery ratio was X on a particular day and Y on another day, the way you should see is how this movement has taken from X to Y. Recovery ratio being a simple ratio to the total number of people recovered to the total number of cases on any given day or on a cumulative count. As the cases started increasing astronomically, every person gets at least 14 days is required to recover normally. With 14 days recovery period time, a guy infected on day 1 cannot get recovered and he has to wait for 14 days. That is the earliest he can get discharged. So, the 14 days buffer is the total active cases. Sometimes some patients with comorbidities, it may go up to 21 days or 28 days. So, all that is, if you factor, you will see the recovery ratio falling drastically from a earlier 50% comfortable position where you could tom to the whole world that you have done a great job. Suddenly, when the recovery rate became 11%, people started saying what the government is doing and what's wrong here. The second untruth, death rate is the lowest in the world. Death rate is just a mere statistic, but death is death. Everybody should really avoid the death, means provide the right kind of critical care and health care which will support the patient to recover in good time. And timely admission of patients to hospitals was a key challenge. And Bangalore infrastructure was not ready because they thought after 85 days, if it is only 350 cases, they didn't build additional infrastructure, though they had time. They were lazy enough. They took it very easy, and the casual approach of the administration was very much evident when cases increased, when people started standing in queues to get admitted into hospital, when the deaths were increasing and deaths multiplied and mortality increased. Government woke up from its deep slumber. So 78 countries all over the world have lower per million death rate than India. It's basically because they have less population and as well as less cases. All said and done, being a small country, India is a huge country. All said and done, trying to peddle a lie that India's death rate is lower than anywhere in the world, though it might be a good message to give, but it is not actually telling the truth. It is not serving anybody's purpose because government's job is to basically ensure that no one dies because of lack of health care. What was happening was the inadequacy of the healthcare facilities, which are not ramped up in time, was leading to more deaths, and government was not ready to admit its faults. So, increase in deaths in a bar graph I have shown. So it is very significant and it tells the story by itself. The positivity ratio, because of the 14-day buffer period required to basically someone to get recovered, and as well as the cases accumulate. So the positivity ratio, when you test more, if the infection spread has increased, positivity ratio will tell you how people have not followed the regulations or the guidelines, because of which the positivity ratio is going up. Positivity ratio goes up in two conditions. One, when you do not properly follow the guidelines, health guidelines. Number two, and when you do not really sanitize and isolate places so that the transmission medium is sanitized adequately and made safe enough so that further infection does not spread. These two are very critical. And positivity ratio increase means both of them are not being adequately achieved. These four graphs, block 1 to block 5, all put together, the 55 days data or 60 days data, reflects this in the same way. On the left hand bottom side, you have average tests per day. Tests conducted on a daily basis are the only measure from where all other metrics are derived. So average test per day, if you test more, you will get more cases. If you test less, you will get less cases. Many states, to look good and controlling of the epidemic, they were testing less and they were reporting less number of cases. So they were looking good, but in the community the virus was spreading. Irrespective of whether you test or not, the virus will not stop finding a host and replicating. And that is what precisely happened in Telangana, in Delhi, in Bihar, and in many other regions all over India, even in West Bengal. And when suddenly huge number of deaths happened, mortality happened, suddenly you had to disclose so many deaths at a time. That was the time when they tried to fudge the figures and not able to fudge the figures, they had to become transparent, and that was the time these state governments came into action and started adequately testing. So ramping of the testing infrastructure has a direct correlation to the number of new cases and the extent to which the infection is identified and people are isolated. On the right hand bottom side, you will have the doubling rate of cases in number of days. What is the doubling rate? A doubling rate is basically for this kind of an infection. WHO in the initial stages of COVID had arrived with research saying that this particular infection average, every infected person normally infects 2 to 3 people before he is been put isolated and put in a healthcare situation. So what happened was, typically the governments were worried about the doubling rate, because that was a metric that was being checked whether the government were doing adequately well. How quickly the infection is spreading is known by the doubling rate of the total number of cases you are finding. So if you test more, you will get more cases. So you control the testing, you are controlling the numbers. So you look like you are doing a great job. But it can be seen through. Data never lies. So the doubling rate, which was almost at 20 days during the lockdown period, had come down to drastically to 3-4 days. And that was the danger zone that most of the states had got into. And that is the time they buckled up and they started putting things in place. And what really shatters a government is when lack of health care deaths are reported in any state. Bad press about the mortality is what really shakes a government into a action. If there were to be no deaths, probably governments wouldn't have acted. Unfortunately, that should not be the case, but that is the reality. Community spread has begun in India. Community, see, if you really look at all the data, here I have put various state data and I have put the cases as on a particular day. If you really look at this data, what it's simply saying is, out of 739 administrative districts in India, where there is infection currently in each one of them, 58 only of these, means less than 10% of the districts, are accounting for 66% of the cases. So there is something seriously wrong with these 60 districts. In rest all, it is in a manageable condition. There has been spread because there has been mobility and there is unlocking. People have to understand this. Community spread is left, right, and center. Whomever you test, you get a positive result, and you are not sure how we got infected. That is a community spread situation. But it is not so. Hopelessly, it is not so. It is not that 10% of the population is infected as on today. We don't know unless we test it. But are we testing enough? Yes, we have scaled up our testing capability from a mere 10,000 in the initial phases all over India to a 5 lakh, 6 lakh, 7 lakh, and last week it was around 8 lakh tests were conducted in a single day. Untruth 4, vaccine is getting ready and may be available commercially soon. Suddenly you will see breaking news coming that one Bharat Biotech has already worked, they are already into human trial stage. What is a human trial stage? What does the Pharma Manufacturers Association, an international body, say about the vaccine discovery and development? What is the timelines? The typical timelines for any vaccine development is anywhere between 7 to 15 years, depending upon for which kind of disease you are trying to look for a vaccine. What kind of a virus you are looking for, what kind of a vaccine. There are distinctive 5 phases. The drug discovery, where you are identifying the possible candidates which can really counter the disease. Then the preclinical, where the 100 will be brought down to 10 or 20 candidates through a filtering process. Then you have the clinical development stage, where you do the phase 1 trial, phase 2 trial, and phase 3 trial. First you will do it on other mammals, then you will do it on human beings. Before testing anything on a human being, you try it on certain mammals. And based on that, you will, the response that you see in them, you will start doing it to the extending the same results into human trials. The whole thing, the most critical part is the trials phase. During the clinical trials, if there are any adverse effects, if there are any other kind of what do you call issues that crop up, that is the time that vaccine probability will come down. So what was around 20-25 candidates at the stage 2 now suddenly will drop down to one or two candidates at the trial stage. Normally trials have to be conducted across the globe, across the origin, across ethnicities, across climatic conditions, and it has to be done on every kind of demographic. Then only the vaccine can be said to be safe to be administered as a drug. Think of it when I give a crocin or a paracetamol tablet, in other words, as a drug, as a generic drug for controlling fever, this drug has to be sufficiently, data must be there to say that it works in every kind of individual, whether it is small or big. The dosage may differ, but you should know how much of dosage is required to control. Because drug is also an alien synthetic drug into your body. Your body will adversely react if there is anything alien. It understands it in the same way. It doesn't know whether it is your friend or foe. Anything which comes alien, first it will try to check what it is for. Okay, and will try to fight it. Okay? You must have heard many political statements in the media after the lockdown that lockdowns were useless because the cases were going up after the lockdown and unlocking began, and many political statements were done to basically make the government look silly because post lockdown we have seen real surge in the number of cases in many districts across India without any exception. Even a small union territory like Andaman Nicobar today is having more than 2000 cases. So probably around 1000 active cases, and that itself is a testimony that we could not really control the epidemic by sheer lockdown. What we did during lockdown was basically build the infrastructure, health infrastructure, which was woefully inadequate when the epidemic hit us. This graph which I have put is basically a weekly change in positivity ratio over previous week lockdown period from 10th March to 3rd June. That is the period when major lockdown for 40 days was in force in India. If you look at the graph carefully, ever since the lockdown was announced, few states had started it 3-4 days ahead of the national lockdown. And if you really look at the data, the data straight away supports the decision of the lockdown that it was helpful in reducing the number of infection, a wider infection, and more cases on a single day had to be controlled because you did not have the sufficient infrastructure. It looks like during this period, our testing capabilities went up. Our hospital bed creation for healthcare also was put in place, and many test kits which are not available indigenously had to be imported, and every state government had to reallocate its finances to take care of the huge burden on healthcare that this particular epidemic is going to cause to the exchequer. If you really look at the test per day graph here, which is spread ever since the testing started from the initial stage, during the lockdown period, there has been very low number of cases, and testing was also not really big time. It was only around 10,000 to 20,000. There are 1 lakh to 2 lakh cases we could really test, and it is during this period that we had to really ramp up our testing abilities across formats because RT-PCR is the gold standard for this particular epidemic. So it's a laborious process, takes a lot of time, and it has capital intensive lab setup is required. Data speaks and speaks big time. BBMP failed to anticipate rise in cases as tests were increased but did not gear up to upgrade infrastructure, both testing and hospitalization in time. This resulted in very high mortality from block period to block period. I'm not saying that BBMP has to be solely blamed for it, but because of sudden spike in cases, BBMP was overwhelmed by the kind of cases and the kind of spread of the epidemic within the city limits that it had to really face a tremendous pressure on its public health infrastructure. There are certain, uh, what do you call, silly decisions done by the government, like Sunday lockdowns or a 1 week sudden lockdown and all that, uh, that they thought that will work, but unfortunately, no short-term remedies work when it is a, a disease is really deep entrenched within the community. Staring at widespread Bangalore city in August is what I had foretold when I looked at the 31st of July data, because there was consistently Bangalore was adding almost 50% of the cases initially on a daily basis of the total cases reported in on a daily basis in Karnataka. Probably over time, what has happened is, as the unlock is in place, many people are moving within the state and they are also spreading the virus. So, this is where the problem is. Once the mobility is enabled, it's extremely difficult to track and trace each and every infected person or a suspect in such a large populated state like Karnataka. Though there are only 30 districts, Bangalore being the epicenter, the possibility of everyone converging at Bangalore or making frequent trips to Bangalore cannot be ruled out. So, as on date, 70% of new cases tracking within Bangalore city, the BBMP claims that it has no records of when and where and how these people got infected. They are not able to really track efficiently the primary and secondary contacts other than their family members. Where will Bangalore numbers reach from here is another pertinent question many people keep asking me. Let's understand one thing. There is a ratio which is a positivity ratio. The inverse of that ratio, which is total tests divided by the total number of cases detected. When I work out this ratio, it basically tells me for every single infected person, how many other people we have to test as suspects before we confirm that they have been infected or not. Initially, when the tracking and tracing started for the initial cases, the ratio was as high as 21 contacts for every single infected case. But the real problem started after the unlock. When you have unlocked the whole state, including Bangalore city, the problem is, other than restricted movement in the containment zones, there is a clear-cut pressure because the infections started growing, and so are the spread, and so are the burden on the health infrastructure. And even the teams which are supposed to do tracking and tracing will suddenly get overwhelmed when they find 4,000, 5,000 cases each day. So what happened was drastically what we see as 21 as a number, as the number of tests conducted after knowing that there has been one infected person, that ratio came down to as low as 4 or 5, which in other terms means that for every infected person, the government administration was restricting it to its near and dear ones associated with that particular infected individual. Put that in context, the number of suspects as on 13th of August in Bangalore is around 433, 141, and most of these suspects will be put through the test. Part of them have been already done, and part of them are to be still ascertained. So, what is the kind of probability? What is assuming that there is 50% of the people from this 4 lakh 33,000 are already cured, okay, on their own, or because of some immunity system, or because of any other reasons, we cannot rule out that these people will not get infected, right? That is why maintaining the social distance to contain the epidemic spread is very, very important. The current trend is almost 25% uh, increase in the daily cases, and that is pretty consistently been that way for quite some time. When we talk about COVID, we cannot stop but talk about transmission as well. Transmission in a COVID-19 situation is directly related to two things. One, the droplets that when you sneeze or cough, you spread, and the aerosols that remain as suspended particles when few droplets fall on ground. What I'm trying to just basically say is even indoor air quality parameters need to be fine-tuned to ensure that there is no massive spurt of viruses which are in a closed atmosphere by using air conditioning. The second slide of transmission is basically relates to respiratory infections that can be transmitted through droplets of different sizes. According to current evidence, COVID-19 virus is primarily transmitted between people through respiratory droplets and contact routes. And one more interesting find was virus can remain visible in aerosols up to 3 hours. The numbers you see on the right side, the entire table, it's a 2005 study, a very big study, and from that I have picked up certain salient insights, okay, and try to see whether we can make sense of in this current situation. Those insights help you unravel when you say 2 meter distance. Is it really the 2 meter distance sufficient? Because the number of droplets that you produce when you sneeze are far higher, and it may, because of the kind of nature of the sneeze itself, it is possible that quite a lot of aerosols are also created which are already infected by the virus, right? And even headphones, headsets that we use on a regular basis, they are also potential transmitting media for the virus if an infected person is using them, because when you wear a headset you are listening, okay, or you are using a headset like now to explain to you a concept. In either case, the droplets, the size of them, how long they stay, and how long they stay on certain surfaces all becomes pretty important. Let's go to certain objects and surfaces and certain studies. And the in a Medicare center in Wuhan, when a primary, it's a hospital, when a particular study was conducted, they found that computer mouse had almost 75% infection rate, trash cans almost 60%, sick bed handrails 42.9%, and doorknobs around 8.3%. Even when you go to ATM to withdraw cash, and if it is a touch button kind of a screen without a voice interface, what happens is people who use the ATM, and if one of them is infected, and if he is somehow unlucky that that particular surface has got maximum concentration, then many people who come in contact with that particular surface may get infected because of the virus. What is the solution? You see here in another study, what they have said, the kind of personal equipment that we carry with, like exercise equipment, medical equipment, PCs and iPads, reading glasses, cellular phones, remote. I don't know how much of us are aware of it. The remote controls of our TV equipment, they are also a great source for spread of the virus. Okay, then the roof surfaces, bedside tables and bed rails, and window ledges. Disinfection is the only solution for keeping the objects and surfaces clean from and totally free from COVID-19 virus. Way ahead, my projections at end of August for India is 32 lakh, though in a study with my counterpart in US, we have done some initial estimation through a MK model, and that model suggests that we may end up at somewhere around, I'm not too sure, around 28 lakhs. But then I further revised it looking at the kind of the cases that are coming and with an average positivity ratio on a daily basis being as high as it is. We need to be a bit discretionary when we try to prepare our report, anything on the projections. Well, this is the India graph where we had worked and projected it to be 28 lakhs. Who is more vulnerable? Government of India published a particular report on the mortality causes and the age groups. The demographics of the COVID-19 uh, close cases are the base for it. And what has happened is the data that we used here to analyze this particular, the government had come out with this report and they claimed that 85% of the people who did not win their battle against COVID-19 were in the age group of 45 and above. So in the second, on the what do you call, the left side, you see three demographics adding up to around 15%. So one should not really panic because the age distribution within the population is not the old kind of uh, numbers that I'm talking about. I'm talking about recent figures in urban areas for the people who did not make it post COVID. We need to be sympathetic and empathetic as well to those people who have uh, basically passed away during this period. But this age demographics is very critical because you can build your health infrastructure accordingly. By this time, you must have already understood that testing is the only way to identify COVID infection. There are three kinds of tests available today to test COVID infection. Number one, RT-PCR test. Second, rapid antigen test. Third is antibody test. Antibody test is not recommended to find out COVID infection in a symptomatic or an asymptomatic man. It is basically used to find out a serological test to find out the amount of spread in a community of a particular viral epidemic. So let us leave around antibody tests. Let's look at RT-PCR and rapid antigen. There are two fundamental differences. RT-PCR is more reliable compared to rapid antigen. The sensitivity of RT-PCR is 91%, whereas in rapid antigen it's only between 50 to 60%. RT-PCR is laborious, takes more time to give out a result. The procedures are laborious. In rapid antigen, the result will come out faster, so you can test more number of samples. However, there can be false negatives. So, a positive in rapid antigen is undoubtedly a active case. But the worry is about false negatives or false negatives. The false negatives may need a retest through RT-PCR. These are all the fundamental difference between the two. Now, once a particular person is tested positive on RT-PCR, there are two kinds of routes. One is an active case, then after a certain period of time, after the medication or the healthcare administration, probably he will move into a closed stage. Just before closure, we have to reaffirm that before discharging him, we need to reaffirm whether he is actually cured of the virus. For that, there is an element of retest. Therefore, before discharging any patient, a retest through RT-PCR is mandatory in case of COVID-19 infection. Therefore, if you look at the states which are the various states which are reporting testing numbers, they are reporting a number which is inclusive of both first time tests plus repeat tests before discharge. And when you look at ICMR data which is being released, that is purely first time tests. That is what I believe because I see a pattern in both these numbers. Once a particular person is retested successfully and it turns out to be negative, then he is declared as recovered. However, when it comes to rapid antigen, when it is a positive, it's an active case, and then it gets into the same routine like a RT-PCR reconfirmation before discharge rather than a rapid antigen. So, rapid antigen test is only to quickly identify COVID positive patients. But false negatives are a big issue in rapid antigen. Therefore, rapid antigen negative result is a not conclusive result. I think this sums up the entire testing paradox. So, what one should know about COVID-19 stakeholders? Governments do not contain epidemic, but people do. Government only creates infrastructure. It is people like us who contain epidemic by practicing hygiene and safety. My suggestion to all the corporates who want to really practice hygiene and safety at workplace, please stress more not only on masks and social distancing, but more on sanitization and humidity control in air conditioned environment. Look at various options of segregating those areas where surface contact can be minimized. That is my key advice to people who want to contain epidemic in their workplaces. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you.